to
Recording in progress.
back to our room. Before I start even saying anything, just want to chant. Sarvamangalamangale Shive Sarvatasadike Sharanye Trambake Gauri Narayani Namostute Shristi Stiti Vinashanam Shakti Bhute Sanatani Gunashraye Gunamaye Narayani Namostute Saranagarti Narta Paritrana Parayane Sarvasyarti Hare Devi Narayani Namostute Kali Kali Mahakali Kalika Papaharini Durga Kshama Shivadatri Swaha Swadha Namostute Kali Kali Mahakali Kalika Papaharini Sarva Vigna Hare Devi Narayani Namostute Jayanti Mangala Kali Bhadrakali Kapalini Durga Kshama Shivadatri Swaha Swadha Namostute Jaya Tvam Devi Chamunde Jaya Bhutarti Harini Jaya Sarvagate Devi Kalaratri Namostute Shri Durge Mat Ki Jai Shri Mahakali Mat Ki Jai. So Marie opened the session with a mantra for the goddess, and I just wanted to keep the tone of that. So a little mantra to Devi, the divine mother in all her forms. As Parvati, the yogini, as Kali, the wrathful one, as Durga, the glorious, victorious warrioress. So welcome. It's been a beautiful journey with Marie and Soteria. And now we're going to get, web it through, because it's all just one theme. All of it. It's presence, right? And how we share it with others. So today I'm going to talk about voice, sound, and silence, and how they are tools within our teaching and our facilitation of spaces that can dictate a lot. They can be very crucial when it comes to us and our presence and an embodied presence of teaching. And I want to start with the voice. And the voice is this mechanism that we have to express ourselves. And the voice is seen as something not just physical, but also energetic. I like to see the voice. You don't hear me so good. I'll come closer. Is this better? The monkeys came around. I love it. Is this better in my voice? I just need a thumbs up. And I'm actually going to remove the sound for musicians because that might make it different. Okay. So the voice, I like to see this as like our multidimensional barometer. So we're more than just our bodies, and we all know this. And our voices are a very tangible way in which we can translate like our inner states. So our voices truly reflect much more than just, let's say, like our knowledge, and even our confidence, they can reflect truly our inner states. So there is this concept that I want to introduce to you if you haven't heard of it, that it's like we have something called a vibratory membrane. This is a concept that one of my teachers really installed in me. And it's like, it is like our little outer bubble that is full of information, of vibratory information. And it is fed by the sounds we hear, but also the ones that we produce. So when it comes to facilitating spaces as yoga teachers, or perhaps you're not one yet, but you want to become one, the voice is something that we can very consciously modulate. We already do that. You don't even need to be a teacher to do that. When you're in an open space and you need to call out for someone, you modulate your voice. You raise it a little bit. Even the pitch will change than if you're really close talking with someone, right? So it is this very powerful tool in which we interact with our space and with the others. When we think of the voice, I want you to think not just of what's called the voice box or the larynx as what produces it. It's not just the vocal cords, which are technically vocal folds. They're not like chords like the guitar. But when we think of the voice, truly what generates the whole voice is the whole body. The entirety of our bodies are the instruments. Just as if you take a guitar and you take only the strings won't create a sound on their own. They need the body of the guitar to do it. So the more spaciousness we have in our bodies, the less tension, the less tightness that we hold, the more resonance that our instrument holds. So as teachers, one of our key elements is to be able to hold space, right? There's this concept, you probably heard it many times before, of holding space. What makes the possibility of that to happen? Truly, it is our embodied presence. And through that, there's also our listening capacity. So Teria was already, playing on this, even Marie, with this idea of the seasons. I loved it because it's like, what's the inner season? What's the outer season? And what is needed for that? So there is this triad or this synergy that we will be exploring in this very brief time we have together, of voice that I've already mentioned a bit of sound, and then of silence. And it is through the wise use of this three that we can create a better container for the experience that we want to facilitate. So when you think of instruments, we need to tune them. And how do we tune an instrument? Well, basically we have a reference note, or like a reference point that we try to match with the different instruments if you're tuning more than one. So I love that idea also when it comes to like energetic or presence attunement, which as the teacher's seat, it's so much of what we learn through our own practice, the inner attunement, but then also the attunement of the field, of the room, of, whoever you're interacting with. So in a way, the attunement is for us to be able to hear what the base note is. In the case of, let's say, teaching a yoga class, is what's the note in the room? And how can I accompany it by creating, and responding to that same vibratory frequency that in the end creates coherence. And that is also shared with what I say, what I cue, what I don't say. So, when I was a new teacher, and I've seen this with new teachers, new yoga teachers, there's always, of course, this natural anxiety when you're teaching a class. And in one way, you want to prove that you know a lot. And at least in my first teacher training, that was 8 or 9 years ago, you had to teach in front of a room and layer so much information because you have to prove that you knew the things. So there's always this like maybe saying more. And as you mature in your teaching, there's this natural like synthesizing of information that translate into I know, and I also know what's needed to be shared. So this attunement, which goes beyond, again, just the teaching yoga realm, but in any even interaction and facilitation, it comes with the knowing as well. Who are you talking with? Who are you, interacting with? Do you know their struggles? Do you know where they are in the path? Because that will accommodate my language, accommodate even perhaps my voice, how loud it is. Of course, we've mentioned that as a space, but it also is like, who am I? Who is there? Who is listening? And can I listen back? So before we do this one exercise that I want us to try with our voice and start getting, familiar with this, I will start diving a little bit into sound and into even voice theory, because in voice theory, there's this thing that I find fascinating since the first time I heard it, which is that you cannot reproduce the sounds that you can't hear. You cannot reproduce the sounds that you can't hear. So when someone says, oh, like I'm super out of tune, it's because they're not truly able to listen. There is a listening gap there that can be learned and can be bridged. This is also why when, let's say right now, if I start learning Chinese, I will have a big gap in phonetics because I won't be able to hear them. The part of our brains that develop this phonetics and stuff is from very early age. So if I didn't grow up learning Chinese, listening, not even learning, listening to Chinese when I was, 3 years old, my brain, kind of cuts off those connections that could potentially hear and translate it into sounds in my own voice. So sound is contained within silence, and the voice is reflected through the act of listening. So now we're going to do this exercise, and I invite you to do it with me, to start listening to our own voices. This vibratory membrane that I was referring to, it's fed through, as I said, our own self-produced sounds, not just, talking. We're always talking. There is so much of that already in our system. So it's like the producing of new sounds, of new ways of phoning, it's what creates also like this nutrition for our vibratory membrane. So the first exercise is, how I like to see it, is like an inner cultivation of the sound, of the resonance, that then is taken outwardly. So we're going to go step by step. So first, just kind of like find a comfortable position, feel your instrument, your body kind of settling. If you wish, you can take some deep breaths. And we're just going to start humming. So humming is real food for the nervous system. If you didn't know, humming is amazing because it tones the vagal nerve. It creates this whole body mind bridge. It's fantastic. So let's just start with a simple hum. One more. Now we're going to, I realized that my mic wasn't being connected to the Zoom. I'm going to change my mic. Please tell me if you can hear me. Perhaps it's a little bit louder. Can you hear me? Did it make any difference? Yeah, better before or better now?
I think better before.
Better before.
Yeah, for me, you're lower now.
How about now?
That's perfect.
Okay. Technology. So now with the humming, we're gonna even use our hands and kind of feel how we're cultivating, energetically we are, cultivating the hum, and then without any rush, the we're just gonna continue it while we open the mouth very gently. So I'm gonna demonstrate it first and then you're gonna follow me. So it will be as we do it, I want you to, imagine, feel, or pretend that you are cultivating the energy within, and then you're kind of like putting it up in the space in front of you. So, let's do it one more time. And this time I want you to be very aware of what happens with the sound. Like, where does it go and what happens between the the M, and the A? If there's a sound that you can catch in the middle. So moving the mouth, opening it very slowly. And with that investigation and inquiry, is there something? Is there perhaps a letter that I hear between the A and the M and the A that happens naturally? So let's do it a couple more times. So if someone did feel, like there was something in between, if you could catch it, it was like, could be like a split of a second that it happens. You can type it in the chat. We're going to do now another exercise that perhaps will clear back. So we did from the inner sound, like the inner resonance of the hum, to the outer expression of it. And it was just a matter of like letting the jaw kind of relax, and this is the intention of it, to coming from the sound, from the inner sound to touch the outside. Now we're going to do the reverse. We're going to start from the outside and go inwards. So it starts with an ah, and then you just like slowly let your jaw come together. There is, no rush in the process, and then finish with the sound inwardly. So let's try it. If you want, the hands, they're very helpful to understand kind of the direction and the energetics of the voice. So I would encourage the cultivating the and bringing the sound. It's kind of like we're swallowing the sound. Inhale. So I would love to hear if you feel any difference. What's, alive in this two, from the M to the A and the A to the M. Does it make you feel different? Does it feel different in the body? Can you hear the voice even being different? I could definitely hear my voice being different. You heard There you go.
I
You
felt
heard
different the second time. I could feel it, my spine, like vibration going up my spine on the reverse, which I thought was interesting, which was also very nice.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
The second one, it felt to me more like it was going in, and the first one felt more like it was going out. I don't know. It was just a different feeling, and I don't know how else to describe it, but that's what it felt like to me.
The second one, it was going in, yeah?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
But it felt like that energetically as well, like I was drawing, and yeah,
Definitely.
yeah.
That was the intention, was for us to also like feel, the power that our voices in something so simple, right? And just humming and opening our mouths. It has, in the expression that it takes. And then, I recognize the vibration of the oo sound. See, you're all like nailing it. Because if you've heard of this before, the om, the pranava, which is the primordial sound, that in the yogic philosophy and Hindu traditions, they believe it's like the first thing that emerges out of nothingness. It is composed by these three sounds. So if we dissect the om, it is basically the a, u, But we played it first in inversion, right? From the M. And as you open your mouth, there was like, this little ooh that then comes into an ah. Same when you go the other way around. So in our, spiritual quest, we may say, there are two ways in which we can relate to our embodied self, which is from the primordial emanation of sound. In this case, it would be the M, into a manifested state, which would be like a ah, right? The very inner, very subtle, to a very outer, very, like even tangible. This is like us manifested into form. But then there's also the reverse path back to the source, from the very tangible, manifested out there into a more internal into the So I'm weaving in a bit of nada yoga
Sorry.
philosophy. Yeah?
Can I just share a little something about it? How I felt?
Yeah, for sure.
Uh, it felt like rather than forcing the om or the aum, felt more like catching the wave and riding the vibration as the fabric of existing, not being separate from it. It just was, really like, I really felt a connection with the movement of it. So, yeah.
I love it. And it's interesting because in Sanskrit, when we learned like the Sanskrit syllabary or alphabet, there is the O vowel, which is long. It's double in cadence. So it's like O, you don't say just O, it's O. And then after it, you learn the A, U. And they say that the O, in terms of mouth position, is literally what happens between the A and the U. So let's try it. Say ow. And notice what happens as the A is turning into an U. The A, truly, it's not an English A. It's an A. It's turning into a U. So, ow. See if you can catch the O sound that happens in the middle. Ow. So Marie, kind of like the riding the wave, it is that. It is like you are riding a wave and then it becomes like this vehicle that it's taking you already somewhere. So I love that. I love that sharing. So sound. You know, there's many ways in which we can approach what is sound. And I kind of want to ask in the chat if you guys want to type in without, you know, the physics, scientific necessarily mentality, just with, you know, your regular self. What is sound to you? If you want to type it in the chat. Or if you want to unmute that too. What is this thing we call sound? Aliveness.
It felt very natural to me, the exercise that I did. So, what is sound? It, yeah, I don't know how to describe it, but it's part of us. It's, like I say, it's both exercises, the going in, going out, um, felt very natural, not like I had to work at it or anything. It just felt very innate, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Beautiful. I love that sound. We are made up by sound. The world is made up by sound. And people have said vibration because the world we know it's made up by vibration. Everything vibrates in a certain frequency. So it's more solid or is less solid. But it is definitely, someone said, movement. And I love that. Vibration, frequency, movement, energy, air in motion. Air, you know, I like that there is the aspect of air. And to me, sounds feels like the source, the music of life, a surplus of energy condensed at a particular vibration and moving in certain direction. Do we have a physicist here, Kristen? That sounds super technical, but I loved it. You know, it is that. It is, well, it is seen in two dimensions as waves at different, you know, speeds and ratios and whatever. But truly it is like bubbles, you know, like when we see it in the three dimensions. And everything is vibrating because sound is form and form is sound. We can replace the word sound by vibration. So sound needs a medium to be conducted in. And, you know, we're creatures that breathe, so we live in the air. So I like the air. It is there in motion. But, you know, let's say whales, their medium of the sound is through water. There's also, you know, other mediums of conduction of sound. And one of them, which I want to, you know, like leave you with the inquiry with, is even matter, like even our bones are sound conducting. So let's try this for a moment. You're going to do like any sound with your mouth open. Let's do an ooh sound for, you know, and you're going to use your hands to kind of direct the sound around you and see how, like, yes, of course, your hands, you know, is echoing you back. But it's like this idea with this inquiry and this idea that your bones are also conducting sound. So let's try for a moment. Ooh. Can you feel that? You know, perhaps I'll leave you the inquiry. You don't need to feel it if you don't. It's okay. So I recently was watching one of the BBC documentaries that I love about animals. And this blew my mind absolutely because it portrays this thing of like the conduction of sound being more than just what our ears listen. And in the documentary, they were showing some elephants in the desert of Africa, super thirsty. They haven't had any water for a long time. And you know how they're all in groups. And the matriarch elephant that is leading the group, she needs to find water, or else, you know, the young ones especially are not going to survive. And there is a storm happening 15 kilometers, around 10 miles away from them. They can't, you can't see it. But they hear it. But guess what? They don't hear it with their elephant ears, as we would imagine. We'd be like, oh, well, of course, they have huge ears. They could hear it. But they could feel it. So the sonic reverberations of the storm, 15 kilometers away, 10 miles, and in some cases, it has been proven that it's been like further than that. She could feel it through the ground vibrations and through her bones, sending the message to her body, to her system, that that's the direction they need to go. 2 days of walking, and then they find the storm, and then they find the water that they need to survive. So we all have that capacity. I mean, not as elephants to hear, the storm 15 meters away, but we have the capacity. Because sound, if you notice, it's a very interesting sense, because we need our ears and all of this to translate it into, the brain, which makes a coherent, like meaning out of it. But because we're all, agreeing that sound is vibration and it's waves and is air in motion and all of these things, sound truly touches us. The touch of sound waves is brought to the ear and then translated into the brain. But the sound waves are felt all throughout the body. So this is why it's so deep, and why in the context of us, let's say, teaching a yoga class, if we know all of this, then it's also kind of like our responsibility to use sound intentionally. So if, you play a song in the background, or if you play an instrument, or you sing a mantra, or you use a bowl, all of that needs to be taken into account as like intentionally crafted to create a certain purpose. So if I do this, which I don't know how much Zoom can translate this, but you have all been in a space with where a singing bowl is struck. Well, we know that it evokes something. It calls our attention. It brings us into presence. It does something, right? And then what's the, on the other spectrum of sound, what is there to contain it? Well, silence. So the strike of a bowl, the sound of a gong, or even when we drop like a line of wisdom or a verbal adjustment or a prayer, when we leave enough room and enough silence, then they are better, like they land better. They have even greater power. And we live in a culture that silence is feared. Like I know of people that, many examples of people who, they, for example, leave the TV on all day. They can't stand the silence. And interestingly, it is not, silence per se that people are running away, but is the chatter in our minds, the discomfort in our bodies, the unprocessed emotions. So using silence in our facilitation spaces needs to also be intelligently woven, because silence makes everything else very loud. That's why it is such a powerful teacher. It amplifies what it's already there. So, when we weave together and we can discern when is it necessary for me to speak, to cue, to stay silent, or to bring in some sort of sound form into the environment, this can really shape the container or assist us in the container that we are holding. And it's beautiful to see that, you know, in the case of true yoga and what we teach, and in the context of, you know, if you want to go deeper in with us into the teacher training, is that we don't use these tools as distraction. Because, you know, like when you're in a yoga posture that is uncomfortable, there is an aspect of us that wants to be distracted. And there is this, you know, aspect of modern yoga that is very performative. But it is like, as true yoga teachers, what we want to bring forth is actually the opposite. In how can our cues, how can our mantras, if we sing one, can be an invitation for presence and not for distraction? How can it be a guiding thread that can bring people to listen deeply inward, which is what really creates the transformation? So I do believe that everyone as a yoga teacher has this huge responsibility to not, you know, add into the days that are filled with distraction and another feel-good moment with, you know, the amazing live DJ set in the yoga class, but as an opportunity to cultivate ultimately the inner silence. I'm going to read. Someone said, Teresa said, a quote from the musician Herb Alpert. When I finally did make a sound on the trumpet, it was talking for me. He says, I was an introvert. I was pretty mute as a kid. The horn was saying things for me that I couldn't get out of my mouth. It was transferred into the horn in the best possible way. Beautiful. So we have 5 more minutes, and I would like to know if anybody has any questions or anything they'd like to share.
I was just thinking with that quote that how it's the silence between the notes that actually makes the music. Otherwise, you couldn't have it going on all the time, right? So, how yeah, how profound silence gives life to the actual notes of the music.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So if nobody wants to share anything else, let's chant together. We have 4 more minutes. I want to double check that you can hear my shruti because I didn't realize that my mic wasn't actually on. Let me turn it for musicians.
I want to just, oh, I was going to say, Jaden had a question.
Oh, yeah?
When you,
Yeah. It was about, if you can hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was about listening to about the elephants. Because I was thinking about that just a few days ago, that exact thing. And I used to live in the city, and now I live outside. So that's very different. I feel like it's the same, like you can listen to the ground, the nervous system of the city, like you could listen to like an animal far away. I feel it in my body, whether it's, I'm not saying I can like listen to one animal, but I feel like it's the same ability we have to listen to other people around us and society in places. And for me, it has become more and more sensitive. And so I pulled out of the city. And I was just wondering if, as that continues to become more sensitive, that listening skill, if you just continue to withdraw into nature more and more, or is there some way of regulate it maybe, or because I can feel, for example, when it's nighttime and people fall asleep and it's just silent in their nervous system and their bodies, then I open up, my whole body opens up, which feels great. Have you found some way of regulating how deep you listen with your body to your surroundings?
It's very beautiful what you bring, because you're not the first person that I've met with like this sound sensitivity. And if you think about it, it's probably more normal to be so sensitive to sound than to not be. It's just that we've been, almost now for generations, just being accustomed to the opposite. So we kind of numb to it, right? And it makes me reflect back into Soteria. I don't know if you were here for her session when she was sharing how, like,
5 minutes only.
Okay. She was sharing how she used to be like so empathic. And for her sensitivity was to feel other people that she thought she would never be able to like hold space. And would be an interesting question for her because, like, now she turned it around and she turns it into her gift. It is now her gift. So she walks into a room and she can read it like a notebook, she just really tunes into it. So in a way, it's like our sensitivities, when we find the trick to them, and you're asking the question how to regulate it, I probably can't answer for you in this moment. But as you learn more about it, you can also learn, like, I don't want to say the word antidote, but like the regulation that then is needed. But then you can turn it into like an actual, then it is your gift. It's kind of like, the wizard that gets the powers, but they doesn't know how to use it at first. And then, like eventually they find the way to do it. So
Yeah, I think what puts me out is that when it comes to emotions and empathy in that way, I feel like that's I can affect a room in that way, so I can meet it somewhat, or decide to just observe it and not do anything about it. But this feels more like more physical and more it's so grounded, so big, it's a city. So I feel so small in trying to affect that, but maybe I need to open up and think that we actually can affect the pulse of places, not only a room or people.
if there's anything you want to share, Soti, about this, you're welcome to step in too, because it's just beautiful to hear all of this interwoven.
Thank you, Lalita. I think I missed the first part of, is it Jaden's share? But is it that you're very sensitive to sound?
Not sound, more like I'm not sure if it's a nervous system of like it's like places, the ground. I was reminded of, because she told about you can listen to an elephant from far, far away, you can listen to the animal coming, and it feels a bit like that I can sense when you feel when the city awakens and when it falls asleep, and I think it's very connected to the nervous system of people. Not so much their emotions, more like their I don't know. And if there's lots of movement in the ground from a road or lots of cars and stuff like that, things going on, it's like a vibration always on. And I was wondering if you can live close to stuff like that and still yeah, be grounded like I am in nature, or a place that's more calm. Or if I just, okay, it's better to just move further out.
Yeah, beautiful question. Thanks for weaving me in. Hearing you say that, I'm reminded of my own discomfort, like the activation, the activity when something feels uncomfortable because there's so much information. I guess what I can offer is it's in that space that if I actually watch my response to it, because initially I might be like, oh my God, there's a thing again, and I may be like shut off. But like if I actually go into it, the peak of the discomfort and somehow regulate into it and listen to it, and then it can teach me something, then there's some kind of like remembrance in my body that like I have the capacity to be with high stimulus or discomfort and find my landscape, find my nature. Like you were saying, it's like, yeah, nature, like when I look off into the mountains, something's regulating in my nervous system. So it's like in the midst of discomfort, how can I find, yeah, the center point and like actually go into it intentionally? And it works for me sometimes, sometimes it doesn't. But I think it's that moment of like, am I reacting to it or am I like inquiring? Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Soti. Yeah, and one more thing, just to weave it to the talk. It would be interesting to explore also this vibratory membrane. The way one of my teachers described it, for me was so helpful because it's not a shield, it's a membrane. And there's an intelligence when we have a membrane around us that is contained and, sealed somehow, but that knows what it lets in and what it lets out. There is that communication with the environment. And for me, it was through my own exploration with my voice and with sound that I could really start feeling this aliveness of this vibratory membrane, that has a choice, that is not like a default. But it is a matter of cultivating it and working through it and even, patching it. There's spaces where it leaks, there's moments, there's relationships so it's like, it's an ongoing exploration for me, particularly with sound, with mantra. But it can also be through other things. So I want to close because we have, a tight schedule today, not to rush. We actually have a break. So I went into 5 minutes of our break. Now we have 40 minutes break before we jump onto the class with our dear and lovely teacher, Zamir, who's back in the room. So please take some time to hydrate, to eat something, to journal if that feels also relevant. And then you meet us here in 40 minutes.